Hello, everyone, and welcome again to Hands Across the Water. Sorry, guys, we're a bit late here. Barry's had an absolute nightmare behind the scenes. The his tech issues, so he's had to walk about the room with his laptop trying to get some sort of signal. So we've got him a signal here. We'll see how long it works for him. But yeah, it's good to finally be on. Sniper, mate, you have tried to catch a live load here in the comments, mate. Thank you very much. It's good to actually be on and speaking to you live, mate, because I know you're always on after and putting in comments. So thank you, buddy. Yes. So Baz, how are you keeping it apart from Wi-Fi issues? How's everything else going with you, mate?
Well, I changed my Wi-Fi last week, and I don't know. It's obviously been a fucking disaster. I've had a. Do you remember years ago you used to get the wee aerial for your TV, and you had to move around the place trying to put the aerial up to get a signal. Well,
Like
I
the
don't.
80s?
I'll not. Well, I'll not name the internet provider because we're probably not allowed to. But it's not a great start. But sure.
Mm. Well, since we've were last on Baz on Monday, we were chatting, possible who was going to be the next manager. We weren't 100% sure. It was between Russell Martin and it was between David Ancelotti. And Russell Martin got the gig, Baz, and I don't think any of us were expecting that. Probably wasn't our choice, if we're being honest. We probably weren't going to go for him, but I think, we'll talk about it as the show goes on, the good points, the bad points of it. But what was your first thoughts, Barry, when Russell Martin got revealed and when knew he was going to be the next gaffer?
Well, I actually didn't believe it was going to be Russell Martin just until probably a couple of days before when it really took a bit of pace, and it looked like David Ancelotti wasn't going to get it. I was slightly underwhelmed when I really grasped it. Um, if I'm being totally honest with it, but now that I've actually sat back and I've taken my time to reflect on what's actually happened, then I've obviously tried to see the positives. I think a lot of Rangers fans were looking at the negatives with Russell Martin rather than looking at any positives he could bring to the table. So for myself personally, I've stripped it back and I've really looked into Russell a wee bit better. And one thing for me was his interviews since getting the job have been really good. He seems to get what he's talking about. He obviously gets Rangers. He's been there before, but yeah. But now's the time to back him, William, and this is and move forward with him. But I'm slightly more optimistic than I was at the start. I think we were all looking that big name, and no disrespect to Russell Martin, but he wasn't that big name at the start. When we were hearing all these other guys. So on reflection, from then to now, I've certainly changed my opinion on it, and I'm fully behind Russell.
Really bad. Well, this is it, Buzz. Like anything, mate. Yeah, we all have opinions. At the start, of course, we do. Who we want to be the manager, who we think should be the next manager. But I think in the main, once the decision's been made, you have to sort of to get on board, don't you? Like, and don't get me wrong, if things don't go right, as the months and years go on, we'll be the first ones on here cracking up and putting our views across if we don't think it's going right, But obviously, until that point, you want it back, and that's what we're going to be doing here. Obviously, of course, we are. We have to sort of believe in the 49ers, Andrew Kavanagh, Brett Murat, who's working down at Leeds, and stuff. All these guys know probably better than what we do. And obviously Kevin Thelwell, etc., has been heavily involved in bringing Russell Martin here, and we just gotta hope that they know a lot more than us. Me and you, Baz, and I would say most of the fans. If I'm being honest, see that our old board, Russell Martin would never have got that job. A bit like Lampard didn't get it because the
Yeah,
board were very quick to listen. They were scared to death of the fans and what we said, and they, what I mean. So they would have went with us. Russell Martin never would have got it, but it's proved in the past that doesn't always work because even though us as fans want someone, that doesn't mean that's the right man for the job. So we have to believe that these guys have got the right man in, Baz, and as you say, support him and see where it goes. But it could be the right football for us. You know what I mean, Baz? Because nothing else has been working for the low block, etc. But hopefully with Russell Martin's style of play, it might just suit the Scottish game.
Well, the sniper puts a great comment in there. I'd be more worried if it was the old board picking this. Strangely, because it's the new board, I'm okay with it. And
Yeah.
and I think that epitomizes everything because you're right. Well, let me see if the old board had been involved with this decision, we'd have been going crazy, absolutely mental. The fact that Russell Martin was brought in and would have went absolutely nuts. But he's right. The new boards come in. They've obviously come in with money. They're not coming in to throw money into the sandpit. They're here to put money into the club to see it grow. So they
Yeah.
obviously believe with their talking with Russell Martin that they believe he's the right man at this time. At this time, he's the right person to. Because by the way, this Rangers team needs pulled from the gutters. This guy has lot of work to do, a hell of a lot of
Yes.
work to do, and this is not going to be easy. But from what I've listened to him in interviews and different bits and pieces that's been presented in the media, it comes across really, really well. His tactical awareness of football is absolutely as high as I've seen any manager talk before. So these guys have been very, very impressed. Obviously, in the interviews, they've decided that he's the safe pair of hands. To coach this team. It's not a manager. He's a coach. And yeah, we'll have to trust the board. They're going to get this right. And the proof will be in the pudding, obviously. When the season starts and we kick off and we're away to St. Mirren trying to play against that low block, how much time will Russell get? I would expect it's not too long. The fans will not sit too idle on it. But yeah, the fact that the new boards went with this, I think that gives us a wee bit of confidence considering what the old board did.
Yeah, no, 100%. And we'll have to believe in these guys, you know what I mean? Until there is reason not to. Do you know what I mean? And at the end of the day, it is exciting, and we are excited, and we have been they've been touted of coming in a lot of months ago. Baz, like yourself being a Leeds United fan, they've made decisions down at Leeds that you haven't agreed with, and the fans in general down at Ellen Road haven't agreed with when selling certain players and stuff. But at the end of the day, it came out trumps for them because they've got themselves promoted and made a lot of money by getting some players off the book. So that's why I'm sort of saying maybe we should just keep our powder dry here and see how things pan out before we jump the gun too quick.
Well, I've said this before when you're talking about the 49ers, I have seen what they've done down at Ellen Road. I've seen the positive steps they've made with that club. And yes, last season they sold a hell of a lot of their best players, but they recruited back in well. They're not afraid to spend money, but they're not afraid to make money on players at the right time. So on that ethos and what I've seen with the 49ers, I was very confident with the 49ers coming in. I had no qualms about the 49ers and Kavanagh getting involved with this particular takeover. That's what gives me a wee bit of hope with Russell Martin, that they've identified the right person. I mean, they've done this at Leeds with Daniel Farga. A lot of the Leeds fans weren't impressed with him coming in, and look what he's done. He's now got them. It was 100 points in the league and a league championship, and they're now playing in the Premier League next season. And by the way, William, the championship's one of the most which
I think we've
coincides with
lost.
Russell
Oh,
Martin.
oh, you're back.
And by, and by the way, Russell Martin won the playoff final against Leeds as well, against a very good Leeds team. So he knows
Hmm.
he tactically he knows how to beat teams. The Premier League, we talk about the Premier League. Name me a manager that could have kept Southampton in that division. The gulf between the Premier League and the Championship is absolutely crazy, crazy. So I think Russell Martin probably done as well as he could with at Southampton in the Premier League. I wouldn't actually hold that against him, to be fair.
Yeah, well, I spent. I don't know if you have done this yourself, Baz. But I spent time today watching the rest. It's a podcast with Gary Lineker called the Rest is Football, and I watched. It was like over an hour long. And it was actually after Russell Martin had just not long after he had just got the sack from Southampton, and obviously the podcast. He was invited to Gary Lineker's house, and they just have a 1-to-1 chat, and I was refreshing listening to Russell Martin because he said he'd never, even though he was a young, he is a young coach, he's never actually had the sack before. It was his first time. And he says basically he had learned lessons as well. Sometimes it takes that to happen. For you to see where you go wrong at certain instances. But it was nice to hear what his high press. He was constant. Just writing we things I wrote down when I was watching today about his high press. Constantly, always wants constant running from his teams. Um, likes players training in different. What I liked that I took away from it was it says likes players training in different positions. So what he was saying was about that. He was saying the guy Lineker, what he likes to do is if you have if you've got a number 6 and a centre back, sometimes in training he'd have the centre back playing number 6 and the number 6 playing centre back. He says what he does that for is because if he's looking to pass from the back and the centre back at times is needing the 6 to come close to him, he says if you actually swap them around in training, it shows them each other how important the other person's role is. So if the number 6 is not coming, in time to the centre back and he's being closed down, it lets the number 6 when he's training centre back to be like, whoa, if I'm not there quick, I'm not showing him the option, and it's vice versa. And he says he does the same with the number 6 and the number 10 and tries to sort of makes everyone appreciate what their individual jobs are and how actually important their roles are to the team. And I thought that just listening to wee insights like that, it came across pretty well.
It comes across brilliantly well. It's whether those particular tactics will work in Scottish football will remains to be
Mm-hmm.
seen. It's not a it's not an easy league to work these teams out. So
But do you
all
not
we can
think Barry's
do.
got a bit like sorry to cut across you. Do you not think him and your man and Big Ange as we call him they're sort of their football's something similar. Do you know what I mean? It didn't and obviously hasn't worked for Ange in the English Premier League either, because we've seen that's been a disaster. But in Scotland it worked well. That high intensity football, high pressure, always running, just constant football in the opposition's faces. So I'm just thinking maybe that could what I mean? It's worked before, it might work again, but you need the players. He has to be backed.
As long as you score goals, because if you don't
Mm-hmm.
and you're caught in the counter, this is what will happen with Spurs. Spurs tried this tactic and got absolutely pumped. I don't know many times in the Premier League last season. Southampton last season were hit for 7 in one game because of that's the way they were playing. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a very risky. It's a risky, very very risky. What the only way them tactics can be implemented is if Rangers recruit the right players, because you see when you're attacking like that, you see when the turn of phase goes the opposite direction, you need the players to be mobile and quick to go straight back. You know what I mean, William? You need to be able to run back quick to defend. You see, if you can't, because we seen this here, even with Barry Ferguson, even with Clement, when we were too far forward, we were getting sucker punched quickly, and that's the issue for me with Russell Martin. He is going to have to there has to be a plan B in place, that if the forward thinking is kicking in, that you got to be able to defend. They're key.
Yeah.
And my worry is how long the Rangers fans will allow us to play like that if we're not winning.
Mm-hmm.
If what you know what I mean, William. Because we've seen it at St. Mirren, we've seen it at Motherwell, we've seen it at Kilmarnock. We were very, very easy to get in behind quickly, and we were conceding goals really quickly. So I'm sure Russell will have identified that, and he'll have certain measures in place. I
All
would
right.
say under Russell's tactics, I would say we'll probably dominate the probably close to 70+% possession. Most games. Maybe in the old firm that'll be slightly different, but most games will be 70 plus, maybe up to 80% possession. But possession is great, William, but you've gotta make it count. So that's what Russell needs to get on top of, and I'm sure he will. But he's under the cost straight away here, isn't he?
Oh yeah, but anyone would be Baz. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, because we're that starved for success and that fed up with watching the same old thing every season. Um, and I think it's this time round. Anyone. It wouldn't matter if it was David Ancelotti. It wouldn't matter if it was Stephen Gerrard, whoever it was. The pressure's going to be on big time. But to be fair to Russell Martin, like, look, he knows himself the fans in the main didn't want him. If you look at any of the polls we done one ourselves, it was, I think it was 5% at one stage wanted him, and I think the hand our Heart and Hand that we do a lot of work with as well, they had one up, and it wasn't. It was something similar anyway. But and I think he alluded to that in his interview, his main press conference. Look, I'm not the sexy name, whatever way you'd want to call it. You know what I mean? When you think of others being linked with jobs, and probably sounds better. Um, and he says himself, look, I've never been in any job I've taken on so far. I've never been the fans' favourite to take on the role. But he likes to think, once he's been in there and got his ethos in, that fans sort of take to him, while he is there. And to be the credit to him, he done well in the championship, as that's a hard, tough league, as you know. And going 25 games unbeaten in that English championship, things like that, that's pretty good. You have to. There's not many teams that can go 25 games unbeaten, so it proves that he can make a team. And he's got to step up each time. He started MK Dons, he moved up from Swansea, he moved up then to Southampton. So there is a belief system by owners, obviously, and head of football, that his ethos, his style of play is good. It just, unfortunately, it just did not work for him at Southampton, going into that Premier League. But as you say, Baz, that can just happen. That's the cutthroat way of Premier League football. Just David here says, David Boardman says, at the end of the day, we can't really judge him until he makes signings and we see how his team plays. The Champions League qualifiers could be a baptism of fire. And that is the truth, Baz, isn't it, mate? And we're back in this here again, Baz, isn't it? And we can't keep doing this. It seems to be every time we don't give ourselves a real chance in these Champions League qualifiers. It always seems to be we're trying to start again. We're rebuilding everything again. And again, we're in this situation. How many players are we going to have in time? Because we need another massive rebuild. It's always tying two hands behind our backs, isn't it, in these Champions League qualifiers?
The Champions League qualifiers, especially for Rangers not winning the league, they're right down at the bottom, trying to claw their way up through round after round to try and get to the Champions League. That's the biggest problem. The fact that
Mm-hmm.
we have, with players that were on loan are now away, with players out of contract are away, with players that are coming back from loan that we don't really want are back. Um, the transfer window will open soon. It's now. I would assume Rangers will have already identified targets coming up to the window. I think the players will be brought in brave and quick. The players aren't back yet for pre-season. I would imagine that Russell will be looking these new players in very quickly. Um, but yeah, the Champions League qualifiers are a nightmare. I mean, if it never mind the league, if we have seen this here in Champions League qualifiers before, where we have been not prepared and we have struggled against some of the smallest teams in Europe, and I can see that happening again if we don't get a couple of players in by then. Is Roskin still going to be there? Is he going to be moved on? There's a whole debate with 2 years left in his contract. Um, Players like Sterling, is he going to be fit to even play that? Let's not forget with Leon Balla going away, who has been our saviour this last season, who we've been able to rely on to come in the big games and help us. He's now away. Proper looks like he's away. There's a lot of gaps in this team. Is Rivdan going? Is he going to be here before the Champions League qualifiers? There's a, there's a big thing going on there at Rangers, and there's a lot of movement. But if the fans are thinking we're going to have 10, 11 players coming in here before this year, it's not going to happen. I would imagine, William, you might get 3 or 4 players maybe before Champions League qualifiers. So we're going to have to
Mm-hmm.
rely on current members of the squad at the moment.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, definitely. That's the way. There is people we're going to have to lean on here. Certain players, anyways. Until we get everything set up. But it's not going to be easy. There's some tough teams as at the start, and it's going to take players a while to get into the ethos of a new. It's going to be all new to a lot of the players coming in as well. You just got to hope everyone hits the ground running. But that's what I'm trying to say, Baz. We're not giving ourselves a chance. We're doing this every bloody season. We're starting again, and 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 we're just not giving ourselves really much of a chance, But you never know. Stranger things have happened. Hopefully, everything works at the right time, But we'll chat later, Baz. I've got a wee hang up here. A few players we've been linked with anyway, and hopefully that'll give us a bit of bit of a hand. So just looking through the comments again. Mark Doy here. Hold on. Guys, Rangers fans has to give Russell Martin a chance. Look at Brendan Rodgers, Watford, Reading, Swansea. He made name. Getting Swansea promotion plus Brendan Rodgers' football career was cut short. Jeff Morrison. Hopefully Martin proves me wrong. Well, hopefully he proves all of us wrong. Because if we're being honest, most of us just didn't want him. Just have to tell the truth on that. You know what I mean? But as I say, we're not the football experts. We're just the fans. I mean, at the end of the day, but we do have our opinions, of course. Barry, I want to ask you about the decision. It seems to be James Tavernier might be an important role. Basically, Russell Martin it's alluded to that he would be have an important role. I know he's played under him before when he was with Rangers a short stint. Looks like he's probably going to be the captain for next season. I think Russell Martin alluded to that fact. What is your thoughts on that, Buzz?
I've said it for anyone
And
that's
the
listening
viewers.
to any. Well, like anyone that's listened to any of our podcasts on YouTube or for the Patreon with Heart and Hand, know that I've been calling for James Tavernier to be given away birth for a long time. I, I personally don't see. There's a new board. There's a new manager. We need fresh energy. We need a new stability. I just don't see how we can put it into a 33-year-old whose legs have clearly not like they used to be. He doesn't get the goals like he used to. If Russell's going to keep him as captain, I'm going to have to accept it. Would I prefer maybe that we looked at a different type of captain now and a new fresh regime? Then yes, you know, James Tavernier's coming in with the same pressure as Russell Martin because he's they used to get it. William, the support was nearly split with James Tavernier. A lot of fans loved him for what he's done in the past, and they love all of everything about him. And then there was fans saying, "Look, he's getting skint every weekend. He's not the player he used to be. His legs are going." But I've seen from last season, it's slightly swinging towards more, we needing a new captain. But if Russell's going to keep him, what do you do? We can't slate him from the rooftops if we're looking to try and win the league title this year. We're going to have to back what
Yeah.
Russell does. I don't agree with it. I'm just saying, but then Russell was never going to come out, William, straight away and say, "Oh, James Cafnir's losing his captaincy." Russell was never going to do that. The way around it is, and I seen this at Leeds. Leeds had your big man Cooper. He was the club captain. And what they done was, he was a wee bit the same. The league's starting to go a wee bit. They recruited other players in, and they phased them out through the season, where he didn't start every game. He was on the bench most of the time. He came on, and if James' leaderships are that good in the changing room, and they're that good on the training park, and they're that good behind the scenes, he can still do that. He can still do that from the sidelines. He doesn't have to be necessarily on the pitch. But if you're asking me a,
Mhm.
a straight, blunt question, do I think he should still be captain next season? Then I'm saying no.
Yeah. No,
That's just my
I'll be
opinion.
honest with you. No, that's it. Everyone has their own opinions, and that's what football's all about. I'll be honest with you myself. I thought last season, at the start of last season, I'd have probably got rid of Tavernier, if I'm being truthful. I thought that's maybe was the way to go. Obviously, we didn't at the time, but we did get rid of a lot of players, like goals and etc. And the wage bill, I think it was actually reported today, Barry, it's come down nearly £10 million our wage bill with getting rid of players and on loan and stuff, which is good. Um, and I thought maybe the start of this season, only because obviously Russell Martin plays this high pressure, constant running football. Do you know what I mean? And we look at Tavernier and we're thinking, well, towards the end of the last season, there, as you know yourself, Bar, I think he was even like Glenn Middleton in that game against Dundee United was torturing him. You know what I mean? And you're sitting going to yourself, maybe it's just not gonna. It's a season too far. Do you know?
Well, you
But
see, you,
don't
but
forget, Russell
sorry,
Moore did
William.
say Barry will be. He's as he says when he came in. Look, there's players I ain't going to think now from the outside aren't going to be good enough, but players can surprise me, and they have in the past when I come in, and and he thinks, oh, hold on a minute, actually, I can get something from him. But it could be something similar. Now, Russell Martin knows Tavernier from his time in playing. It could be the opposite way. The surprise could be for Russell when he's actually in the train. Everyone's playing his high pressure football. It could be him maybe looking, going, for me, how long here? Maybe Tavernier's not actually suited to this anymore. Do you know what I mean? Or he could surprise us. But I think when you can see a player aging and it's there, you can see it. I think if everyone's honest, they'll say it.
A lot of he's too easy got at, and especially with counters, he just can't cope. He can't cope with counter attacking, and that's what I'm saying about if we're playing a very high press and we lose the ball, and the ball moves quickly. He's not going to catch anybody. We all know that. He's not going to. No matter what training Russell does with him, you get to a certain age, and your legs just haven't got the same pace in them anymore. So that is a slight issue for me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my problem. It's not that I hate James Tavernier. I'm just trying to look at the team and think, do we need to look at other options and other players and youthful players to train? If you look at Sterling, and I know Sterling's never hardly fit, but when he's playing right back, he has that pace, he has that longevity in the legs to track the defender down and win that tackle. And James for me just doesn't have that anymore. Unless maybe Russell Martin's looking at James Tavernier in a completely different role.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't know. He might switch him into midfield a wee bit. I don't know what he's thinking. You might get a surprise, or he mightn't play right back next season at all. He could have a completely different system for James Tavernier. But you don't. But Timothy's put the right thing. You don't always need to play to be a good captain. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? The manager doesn't play on the pitch, but he can still lead his team. So it's in a perfect world, you want a captain on the pitch. We all know that. But it'll be an interest. I'm just watching this space, William. I'll just wait and see what happens. We'll not really know until the season starts and bit of pre-season to see his where he's testing wee things, and you start to get a wee half an idea of what he's up to. But it will be very interesting to see what he does with him.
Yeah, no, definitely 100%. So just before we sort of crack on with loads of different, there's so much to talk about, but one of your best mates here, Baz, we're going to stick on Philippe Clement. Obviously, was in the. He's been talking about his time at Rangers. He thinks that the fans, or should I say, our old board, listen too much to the fans. And he thinks he should have kept on to his job. So anyone listening in, let us know your comments on it. Buzz, what's your thoughts on it, mate? He says that he maybe another 3 to 4 windows, then they would have got it right if we had more patience. Well, another 3 to 4 windows is another couple of years, and another couple of years added on to how long he was already there is far, far too long. What is your thoughts, Buzz?
Well, see, the fact that Clement actually came out with that statement it proves exactly why he shouldn't have been why he should have been sacked. You don't get that time at Rangers. You don't get 4 windows on top of what he already had. It doesn't. It never. The man's talking complete crap. I tell you, why they're even wanting to interview him is beyond me. Because it was quite clear after the Queen's Park game he had completely lost the plot with that team. I mean, that was the worst. I look back, William, and that Queen's Park game was the worst game for me in years. I don't know about you. It was I see after it, I just went, Jesus me, how much lower can we sink? And by the way, that's no discredit to Queen's Park because they're a great club, but it was so poor, and that man yeah, more waffles from the Belgium. Nonsense crap. I watched a couple of snippets from him, and I thought you're talking so much shit. You know what I mean? Absolute dog's crap. And I am so glad that the Rangers board done the right thing. They got rid of him. They actually should have got rid of him before that. He should have been gone before that. The only thing that saved him was the old firm wins. That's what saved him. And he says if we had won the League Cup, the fans would have been really happy. And Rangers fans don't want the League Cup. They want the league. They don't want the wee Mickey Mouse League Cup. They'll take it if they can win it. But that's not what Rangers are about. Philippe Clement had completely lost the plot, and I am glad to see the back of him. Well, I thought I seen the back of him. Now his old baldy Bob's coming up now and again here, spouting a load of crap. No, complete yeah. Gary Hines, come on, lunatic. He's a nut job.
Come on, does it? Well, At least the man stuck to his principles, but no, it wasn't. It was never working out. To be fair, it just not was not working out. So, Jeff made a comment there about McCausland. So yeah, we did have a wee thing of players
Mm.
maybe leaving the club. I say, well, we'll move on from Clement because I say I just wanted to get it out there because it was a wee bit of news today and people were chatting about it. So I thought I would let everyone hear their views, and I think everyone's in our sort of thinking bracket in that one. So what's your thoughts on this one, Baz? Uh,
It's
well, there's a few different clubs interested in McCall's, and Basel is actually a decent club. They're always in Europe. Um, 20, we sort of thought that one would happen for Proper. As I say, it's all rumours at the minute. There's nothing guaranteed, but we'll start with Proper first. The easier one of the two, in my opinion, Baz. I just think it hasn't worked out for him, mate. 20 is a club where, and the Dutch football is a league that suits him. It's not just as physical. I think that's everyone's probably in agreement that that's a good move if we can get some sort of money back.
Look, Robin. I said this from when I seen him in the first 5 games. I actually said to you and Gary, is he any better than Ben Davies? Because the whole point of Ben Davies going on loan was he wasn't good enough, and we were trying to bring in this guy who came with by quite high pedigree at the time. He was a FC20 captain, a very great good player. But as the season unfolded, in my opinion, was worse than Ben Davies. Worse. I don't wish the fella any bad luck. I wish him all the best at FC20. And to be fair, I actually think he did try. I think it's not like he didn't try. He just wasn't good enough, and he wasn't good enough to play in Scotland. So in terms of Proper, all the best, mate.
Yeah, no, it just didn't work out. It was a bad signing. Yeah, you understand on paper, yeah, because he obviously had a small get out of the club clause. It was a small price for us to pay, but yeah, that shows you where our recruitment went wrong, Barry. Because instead of looking at the attributes and how was that going to come across for in the R division, something with field again. Yes, okay, in Europe he was fine in most of the games, but in the league he was bullied. So we'll move on to McCall's and Baz, and as I say, we're Ulster men. We love to see our Ulster men doing the best. Of course we do. We're proud, so proud when we see an Ulster man wearing that Rangers jersey. But is he good enough? This is the thing, Brian. We love Rangers more than we love anything else. So that's where it has to the decisions have to be made. And in my opinion, young Ross just hasn't been good enough, Baz, if I'm being honest.
Well, let's be totally honest. If Ross McCausland was from Albania, say, or like Barami, we give him the time of day. That's the problem with Ross because he's from Northern Ireland. He's an Ulster boy. He was in the bands. He supported Rangers his whole life. He used to follow them and go and watch them on the bus to Glasgow. He's came through the youth. Everything was set up for him to be brilliant at Rangers, and it hasn't worked out for him. Now, when he first came in, I thought, Jesus, Ross McCausland looks really well. He was bright. He was making lovely inside runs. He looked very lively. Then for me, teams just seemed to work him out because he kept trying to do the same thing all the time. He never really went on the outside. He always tried to come in the inside, and players just generally went, well, we know what he's about to do, and they just stopped him. And he's he's quite lightweight. What I would say is, I mean, I don't want to bring Clement up again, but I will. When Clement did play him, he always had him out of position. He always had him over in the left wing. He always had him at right back or something stupid. He never played in the position that he should have. If I'm taking my Ulster hat off, then for me, at the very minimum, bare minimum, Ross McCausland at least needs to go to a team like Hearts or Kilmarnock to get a loan. Bare minimum now. And get some experience of playing week in, week out. Because at Rangers, he's not going to get it because he's not at the level required. And if we're
Yeah.
looking at pushing on next season, Ross McCausland, in the eyes of all supporters, at this moment in time, William, he's not making the grade. And by the way, that also is the same case for Northern Ireland. But it's not like he's not really playing for Rangers and he's starting for Northern Ireland and he's getting on every time. He doesn't get on for Northern Ireland really either. So it's definitely affecting him. But if the boy wants to have a half decent career and he wants to get his Northern Ireland place back, he is going to have to make a move away from Ibrox, whether it's on loan or a permanent move. I think it's going to have to happen, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think that last game for Ross, that he came on and then got sent off and stuff, and it was a bit of a disaster. Did not help him at all. I think a lot of the support were done from there, But as I say, look, he gives us all. There's no doubt about it. But it's just not, as you said, maybe a bit predictable at the start. First few games, it was good. It was like he got that new contract and stuff, and then it's sort of just petered out
If
after that a wee bit, but
I think Ross McCausland's a bit like Glenn Middleton. Glenn Middleton's not a bad player, but he's not a Rangers. He's not at the level to play for Rangers. We've seen this before. Chrissy Burke ended up leaving, playing for Kilmarnock for years and stuff. Sometimes it just doesn't work out for you. And that,
yeah.
unfortunately, with Ross, injuries hasn't helped. Yes, I know there's a comment there about injuries, but even when he's had his chances, William, he hasn't really grabbed it with both hands. And by the way, I've seen some of the social media stuff about Ross. What I would say to Rangers, yes, he mightn't be playing the best football at the minute, but conserve him some respect too. I see some of the comments I've seen have been pretty poor now. To be fair, he still is a Rangers fan, and he always has been. So we can just give him a wee bit of respect for that. But I think for Ross personally, it's time to maybe to make new postures with him.
Yeah. David Boardman says, I think that last match vs Aberdeen showed his time is up. It's a shame it never worked out, but he lived our dream, and now it's time he moved on. Martin needs to sort defence with these set pieces. They didn't look comfortable defending corners last season. We weren't very good at defending corners at all. We were very poor at attacking them as well. And then that was another infamous quote from Clement, where I ended up backfiring on him when he was asked about would he get a guy in for set piece coaching, and he says, "No, I love doing that myself." And obviously, it didn't work after that. So we'll go on sort of and talk about who we could be getting in. Hold on, or is this, as John Moffat says, hold on, we'll get that one up as well. Are they actually going to sign players or just mess about and waste time as usual? I hope not. I hope they'll be signing some players soon. But as I said, I actually think that Russell Martin only actually starts properly tomorrow, officially. Only starts tomorrow. So I would like to think that there'll be players in at least this week. At least there would be a couple in this week. If not, I would be asking questions myself, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I wouldn't overly worry too much. It's I think they will move very quickly. I would say that move's been being made even before Russell's been put in charge, because obviously now with just it's all about recruitment, not just from the coach but from the sporting director and stuff. So targets will be identified. But further, William, you've got the picture of Connor Cody. Connor Cody is a very well veteran Premier League player. He's also played in the Championship. He'd be a decent addition. The young lad from Peterborough, very very tricky winger. I'm not sure of his name. I can't think of his name. Somebody must have put his name up. I can't really remember his name.
Kwame Poku.
Poku.
See us, Ulster, man. See us here. You know what I'm sitting thinking here when I'm just thinking of my dad, and I'm going, how the hell is he going to pronounce half of these names? It'll be good fun watching the matches with him.
He called it Cherney. He got Chesney, didn't he? They called him Chesney.
Hi.
Your mom Chesney's rubbish. That's
and Nacho Novo always got that. What was he got? He got Nacho Novo or Nacho Nova. I don't know what the fuck.
I like the old car, Nova car.
Barry's Jeff says, say that name again.
Was it Poku? I don't know what it's called.
Well, he's a good wee player, I'll tell you. Just looking at this, well, we'll go in order here, Barry. So we'll start off with Cody, because Connor Cody. So, what do you think? I would say, look, Definitely experienced player down in the Premier League and stuff with Leicester, Everton, Wolves as well. And when he's held captain's arms band, and he's also been vice captain of certain some of these clubs as well. Maybe pace isn't there, Baz, but definitely, I would say he would have the ability and the strength to take on anything in Scotland. But what's your thoughts of him? I know you watch a lot of English football more than me, anyway.
Listen, he would like a lot. Some Rangers fans are thinking he's going to be the next Shane Duffy. Cody is better. Cody's better than Duffy. I mean, I wouldn't worry too much about that. Duff, Cody still got a wee bit of legs in him. He's only 32, by the way. He's not overly old. He's not an old player. He's only 32, and for a centre half, that's not that bad. I've seen him play. He's a good player, but it's like everything, William. He needs good players around him as well. We seen at Rangers where, say, we talked about Tavernier losing the ball, or even when Suter lost the ball, you had Balogun there for the pace to help him out. So I'm hoping if we bring a Cody in, we bring a player in with pace in the legs. That if Cody, he's not going to make the right decision 100% all the time. But if you've got a player beside him with a wee bit of legs, that if he does make a wee mistake here and there, you have another player that can mop up for him. So I think that's key to Cody. I don't think we could have another player with the same sort of pace as him. I think we could get caught too much over the top with that. But in terms of bringing him up, as long as his wages aren't too high, I would say yes. By all means, bring him up.
Yeah, I think Timothy, what he says are playing the high line suit him, and that's what I was saying about the pace. This is where you get caught out as well.
Well, then,
It's
yeah,
it's
but that's what I'm saying. Yeah, but that's what I'm saying, William. If you've got other players around him who with the legs that can cover for him like that, do you know what I mean? That's why I'm saying about other
yeah,
players that have a bit of pace.
yeah. But there's Mark asking Barry, would you take Aribo back if he's been told to leave Southampton? Would you take Joe Aribo back, or is the past? What's your thoughts?
You take Joe Aribo back 110%. I'll actually go to Southampton and drive him up if you want. 100% with him. Joe Aribo just is suited to Scott. You see, when we talked about breaking low blocks, who was one of the best players at breaking low blocks for us over the years? Was
No,
Joe
he
Aribo.
was good.
Joe Aribo. And by the way, he was also very good in Europe. So I think it's a no-brainer. I would be interested to see what his wages are at Southampton and how much Southampton want for him. But if the price was right, Joe, by the way, William, he's only turning 29. He's
But
not in his 30s.
but that's a good comment. The sniper says there too. Like Martin didn't really play Aribo that often.
Well, he played more in the Premier League than he did in the Championship, funny enough. I'm not sure what that was about. I don't know.
Would the mini make it, boy? If you're saying you're going to drive people up the road, I don't know if I don't even think Joe Aribo's
It,
legs would get
it's
into your fucking mini.
it's a Mini Cooper. Just to state that it's a Cooper. It's not a cheaper version. It's an actual Mini Cooper. It's a tell you she goes like 100 boys. She's some crack. The wee Mini now. But I do have another car. Like I know what I mean. But no, I don't think Joe would fit in the Mini.
Barry's 6'2" and bought himself a mini.
Well, to be fair, it's a work car, and it was one of the first things I could get. And to tell you what, it's a wee cracker. Like I tell you, she goes some top. She can really motor like, and yeah. It's an interest. It's hard to get out of. Like it's very low.
Well, just also, Barry. So this is another one. I got to get used to all these names. Turgeman, the Israeli striker. He's another one. I probably butchered that, by the way. So in the comments, let me know if I have. But I will get it right for next time. I was trying to do some research and getting his name right, but I couldn't find the pronunciation of it. But Barry, he's another one, mate. He's definitely highly rated. I was actually looking. Leeds were actually interested in him last year as well. So the 49ers have been sniffing about him. Russell Martin was wanting him for Southampton as well. There was chats about that. And hearing today it would offer £4 million, but that bid has been rejected. But David Egger was saying today on his wee daily update that as far as he's aware that we're still actually in talks at the minute with Tel Aviv for getting him. I would say that would be a signing that would excite me, Barry. Someone who's quick with his feet, great goal scorer, knows how to score goals, knows how to play others into play, isn't selfish as well. If you watch the videos of him, he's laying off a lot for other people to get goals. That would be a player that would
Well,
excite me.
we've obviously went in with a low ball offer. You know what I mean? I would say Rangers have a pot set aside to increase that. Maybe I would say upwards, maybe to 6.5 million. I would say they'll probably go up towards if needs be. But William, you pay for strikers. You know you have to put your money in your pocket. You don't. You know, a cheap striker usually brings. You know, look at Dessers, 4.5 million. Desser says if I scored as well as you all wanted me to, I wouldn't be here, type of thing. So, you know, sometimes when you're in the market, you've got to put your hand in your pocket and spend. And for Rangers, our biggest problem last season, oh yeah, Desser scored a lot of goals, but it was scoring goals in the right moments. And having watched a wee bit of a heads up, um, the Sniper's heading off there. Thanks for coming
Yes,
on there.
thanks, Sniper, for coming on, mate. Appreciate that.
I see the Sniper in a lot of ones. I would go into some other of our friends' as chat groups and stuff and go on, and the Snipers, he's in them all, and so's Mark Dowie and stuff. So you see them all. They love it now. They love the old chat groups. But
That's good though. That's what it's all about, isn't it? That's what it's
of
all
course it
about.
is, because I see these guys all the time. They're all the different podcasts and stuff, and they support them all, and that's what Rangers is all about. But going back to the striker, yeah, put the hand in the pocket and get this guy, you know, and he looks the real deal for me. Yeah, you may give them a shout, William, because the two
Yeah,
of
well,
us
give it a shout. That's our two daughters, Faith and Sophie, and they are torturing us. They've been on from the start. So there you go, girls. Yeah, don't worry. This live will be ending soon. You'll be coming in for your dinner. But just so thanks for watching. Keep those comments coming, and you better have liked as well.
Tell all your friends we're doing this, you know.
There's
No,
Timothy
no,
as a
it's
good show, lad. So no, it's good to have a lot of new faces on, Baz. I know you're saying you watch and we do watch the other pods. It's really nice to have all these people in the comments going. It's great. So it is. But as I
well,
say, Barry,
that's
so
what it's all about.
100%. So we'll move on quickly then to the winger Poku. I think Jeff just wants you to have to try and say that name again. Um, he's another one, Barry. Looking at the stats last season, I think he played something like, I need to double check, 29 games for Peterborough, score with and then goals and assists. He had over 20, which is good. Like, and he had a good goal scoring and assist return the season before as well. He's away on a free, but I would say he's going to be one that a lot of clubs are going to be interested in. He's a class wee talent as well. But it's exciting just to be linked with these guys, and now yeah, it is actually possible that you could have this kind of player.
Here's where I'm going to come in with this one. We mentioned before, right? They're yeah, they love it, them boys. But that's what it's all about, because it's in their blood, William. These guys, it's in their, like all of us, it's in your blood. You just want to talk about it 24/7. You know, that's what you want to do about Rangers. You can't let it rest. Even you get a lot of earache from your missus about doing too much. You can't help yourself. So you wake up thinking about it. You go to sleep thinking about it. But I wanted to mention about Barami. Last season, Barami was like Plan F. Rangers didn't really want Barami. What ended up happening with Barami was he was the last person on the shelf. There was nobody else to bring in, and that's what it looked like with Barami. If we just brought this guy in, well, here we've signed somebody. Whereas I think this time with the 49ers, they're not going to allow that to happen. They're going to identify targets. We'll not get every single target. You know, we will get outpriced the odd time, but we'll have a wee bit more better financial muscle to actually go in there. And for me, that's exciting. You know, we're not going to go and saying, you know, you look at Borussia Dortmund. Borussia Dortmund have paid nearly upwards till nearly 40 million for Joby Bellingham, and who's just basically come out of the championship. That's a huge amount of money. We're not going to spend that type of money. It's not that the 49ers don't have it. We just in Scotland can't. We cannot do that. We can't afford to to spend money like that. The way the Scottish League is. But I'm excited for caliber of players, and that's what excites me.
Yeah, what about that one? Mark says Baz Danilo must be on 30 plus a week. Well, I would say after paying 6 million quid or whatever we did for him, yeah, I would say you'd probably do command that sort of fee. Um, would you loan the likes of him out, or try and get rid of it? Then to bring the likes of a Jamie Vardy and he's Aston Baz. What do you think of that one?
It's a very, very difficult one. The problem with the Danilo is we paid 6+ million for him. We're not going to get that back. That's gone. That money's gone. Like, because he's not playing like a £6 million player. I know been injured. I know his chances have been slightly limited, but I don't. My heart wants Danilo to stay because I think he gets it at Rangers, and I'd love him to do really well. My head sort of thinks if we could move Danilo on, I would be doing it. I don't see him as a future player for Rangers. By the way, I've seen him when he has had one-on-ones. He misses a hell of a lot, William. We talk about Dazers, but Danilo doesn't put too many away when he gets a chance either. Like,
Yeah,
um, Jamie Vardy's a tricky one. That's a difficult one. If you're bringing him in for one season, just to steady the ship and bring that experienced head in, by all means bring him in. But I wouldn't want Jamie Vardy to be coming up the Ibrox and getting 50+ grand a week. I think that would be absolutely madness. As half a decent player he is, yes, in the Scottish League, William isn't for everybody.
no,
And that's do you want to spend say 45 to 50 grand on a 39-year-old coming from the Premier League? Don't know. Difficult one.
no. Well, just quickly before we sort of head up, because we've got a wee buy me a coffee for Hands Across the Water link. It's on the top of the comments. Or if anyone would like to, nobody has to, obviously. It's up to yourselves if you want to do that. It just helps us get better equipment and stuff for the show, and sort of put a wee bit more into the show. As I say, me and Baz are just working guys, normal working class guys. We try our best to be on his life as much as possible. Obviously, with working life and the kids and stuff, it's not always easy to do it. So we've got a wee thing there to help us get better equipment and stuff. And if anyone would like to donate, it doesn't matter how much it is, how little it is. It's up to yourselves. You just don't have to, as I say. It's just the options there for you. But the chat's been really good, Baz. I've really, really enjoyed it tonight because this has probably been the best one so far. I know we've only done a few, but this has been a really good one. Everyone's in there and getting involved in the comments. Class. It's good to
Of
see.
course, that's what it's all about. And I just want to mention when there's been a few times, William. Here's my other pronouncing, Mazowski. What do you call him? Remember the ex-Aberdeen striker?
Mioski from Aberdeen.
Mazowski.
He was a good wee player. It actually hasn't worked too well for him leaving Aberdeen. I think it was he at Girona or something. I can't remember where he
It
went.
hasn't worked
It
out. It
hasn't
hasn't
worked out.
worked out. He suited the Scottish football, maybe not necessarily
Oh yeah,
Italian football. That's just one of them things,
yes.
Horses for courses.
I wouldn't say no to him. I'll tell you that now. He was a good
No,
player.
hundred
He was a
percent,
very good player.
100%. Very good player.
Hi, there's David says we can't really sell Danilo because he hasn't been on the shop window. We could possibly sell him to a hospital or manual students to work on him. There's a few like that, isn't there?
For Sterling, you could add Sterling. You could actually send a five-a-side football team down there to play for them as well because there's that many of them.
Well, we'll end it with this. We'll end it with Mark's because this is the first time he's been on. So we've been chatting away to Mark, and I know all the guys been amazing, and Timothy and all, and Cammy as well. But Mark's asking her, Baz, and myself, I'll let you start it, Baz, and then I'll end it. Would you keep Dessers?
I think at Desser's age, if you're going to get 4 or 5 million for him, you move him on. You'll not get another opportunity to get that money for him again.
Mm-hmm.
And I know he scored quite a few goals, but for me, he doesn't do it always at the right time, and he's coming 30. So if you're going to get 4 or 5 million for him, move him on. I mean, we've talked about player trading model. Well, now would be the time to move him on at 29 if you're going to get that amount of money. And by the way, people will pay it because there is teams out there don't play. They don't have player trading models. They just want the players in at the time scoring goals, and they're not worried about losing 4 or 5 million. Where Rangers, to steady the ship with the new owners will not lose any player now without getting something back. If Dessers is worth 4 or 5 million now, Dessers could have a honker of a season next year, and then the next year, what do you get for him? 2.5 million. So if we're going to bring the right strikers in, yes, move him on. By the way, you big him on there too. And if you're talking about that guy, William, you were talking about from what was that? What do you call his name again?
Which
Toonstrom
one?
or whatever you call it. The
Oh,
boy, the
Turdman,
Israel boy.
from the Israeli.
Then yes, if you're going to get 4.5 million for Dessers or 5 million, yeah, move him on.
Well,
Definitely.
the thing is, yeah, I think it comes to, well, my point of view is like, and I don't like this, Big Dasters. At the end of the day, he's been on a poor Rangers team, but his goals have been good. And that's the truth. It is. He's definitely, it's not been good enough in my opinion. But out of the very poor Rangers team, he's done okay. But I don't think he'll suit this style of football that we need. This high pressure, this high intensity, this always in your face, always. And I just can't see him doing that. I just can't see it happening. I don't think it's going to be what he's going to be the kind of player Russell Martin will want, if I'm being honest. And I think he maybe will move on. I do agree with Baz, um, what you're saying there, Baz, as well. Like, this is it. At his age, you sell him now. If you're looking at the contract, how many years are left, you're looking at him having a good season last season. You do it now or you don't do it. You know what I mean? This is where
Yeah.
you'll get money back, and you'll get a club in there that will take him on because they know we'll keep bang you goals, and they'll be happy enough to spend that kind of money on him.
And that's
So
what it's all
I
about.
agree with you. It's
That's what
100%.
it's all about.
But yeah,
Nico
it is.
Raskin's slightly different because he's only 23, 24. There's a difference there. You can hold on to him for another season or two. You can still get that big money. The likes of the players when they're reaching the 30 mark, it just the value just starts to go down. It's just the way football is.
Yeah, well, 100%. No, well, as I say, that's us. We're probably done for the night. We're coming up to the hour mark, and we'll leave it there. As I say, we are going to try and get on a wee bit more often. It's not, as I say, it isn't easy. Um, trying to do it. We might have to recruit a few Ulster men as well and stuff onto the show to help us sort of carry the load a wee bit. But we do really, really enjoy it. I thank as all these new guys that came on today, Timothy there as well, mate, Mark, Cammy, all those guys, Jeff,
Don't forget
who's
don't forget
always
the
on
sniper.
every Monday, and the sniper who's been desperate to try and catch a live show. So and finally has. So we really appreciate all of you coming on. We really appreciate everyone that listens to us on Patreon as well when the show goes out there, for the heart and hand and stuff. So it's amazing, and we do enjoy the feedback. We come on this for a bit of crack, see how we get on, just to put an Northern Ireland voice out there because there isn't any. There's plenty of Rangers podcasts, but there was nothing happening from here. So we wanted to change that up, and yeah, the feedback's been amazing. The support's been amazing. The Facebook's got over 18,000 followers, which is actually insane. So thank you everyone, as I say, and we will be with you again very, very soon. And we'll keep the crack going. Hopefully by this time when we're on with you, we'll be actually chatting properly and not be rumors. It'll be a few players to actually talk about and dissect and seeing what they'll be able to do. So it'll be interesting to do that with us as well. So thank you very, very much, guys and gals who've been watching, and we'll be with you again this time next week.